Council meeting, Thursday the 31st of October. If we could all please stand for our opening karakia. Te taua mai runga, te taua mai raro, te taua mai roto, te taua mai waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, hongi hui e tai ki e. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed on the Council Facebook page, and we will also be going straight into public excluded. If I could have a mover and seconder for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Price and Councillor Tariha. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. So moving into public excluded, we have the open agenda of our council meeting. Again, we have apologies from Councillor Taylor and Councillor Simpson. If I could have a mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Brown, Councillor Tariha. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Any conflicts of interest? And we do have public forum speakers here today from the Hawke's Bay Regional Economic Development Agency, Chief Executive at Lucy, and Karen from the board. So I'll invite you both up to the front to present for us. Lovely to have you here with us.
This is very low. Oh.
Do feel very low.
Ata Maria, kia koutou katoa. Lovely to be here with you this morning. My name's Karen Rangi and I'm a Director on the Hawke's Bay Regional Economic Development Agency, here with our Chief Executive this morning, and we're going to double team the presentation. Mayor-wise, just checking how long we have.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, thank you. So, it's been a few months since Lucy and my colleague Shane Walker were here in April, and just a little bit of a recap in terms of where we've got to since then. And also just a reminder that we were formed right at the end of 2021 as a company with shareholders in terms of local government, iwi hapu and business. We've got an independent board, and of course our funding has been allocated amongst all the councils. Since April 2024, when Lucy and Shane were last here, our letter of expectations has finally been approved, which is good. And we've put in place the requisite funding agreement and just waiting some signatures on that. And we haven't yet received any funding commitments from councils beyond June 2025. The other thing that's happened, of course, you'll know that there's been a review commissioned of the regional architecture here in Hawke's Bay, which I guess was a bit of a surprise to us, given that we thought the thinking behind the setup with REDA was part of establishing regional architecture. So we're awaiting with interest what the results of that review will be. But in the meantime, there's still things to be done and things that we've been doing. So I'm going to pass it over to Lucy in terms of the what's been happening on the operations front for REDA.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for having us here again. So a pretty brief update here in the paper, but I guess the most important thing to share with you is the research that we're doing into the economy at the moment. So one of the things that we said that we would do in our letter of expectations is undertake a big piece of work to really understand the shape of the regional economy and what our challenges and opportunities are, so that we can look at what the practical responses are. And we're really interested in getting to those levers that we can actually pull. So what is it that local government can do to create the conditions for business success here? What is it that businesses can do with each other that they're not already doing? Where are the areas that we can make a change, I guess? So we've done the Infometrics review right at the start that looked at the data over the last 5 years, which you've all received. And then now we're doing the qualitative part, which is going around interviewing businesses. So that really gets down, we do we're doing about 70 interviews all up. We were going to do 20 initially, but we decided to really expand it because we found it, we were getting really good feedback. The interviews are about 45 minutes to sometimes up to 2 hours. They're pretty in-depth. We have met businesses, the PSGEs, councils and other organisations, but with the focus really being on businesses. We asked them about their history, their growth aspirations, and then really practical questions around what's their experience of working in Hawke's Bay, setting up their company, what it was like when they started, what's it like now, what are the barriers and the opportunities. And we've found a really high level of engagement. We're working with Infometrics and Martin Jenkins have said they've never had such an engaged business community as they have in Hawke's Bay. And I find that in speaking with businesses, there's a real commitment to the Bay and a commitment to making things work here. I just talked to a business leader last night at the Young Enterprise Awards, and he said the difference here for a business owner is that the community is small enough that you feel that you should make a contribution and can make a difference. So I thought that was quite interesting. So just some of the high-level findings, and these are really just to share with you at this stage because we are testing the findings and the recommendations in a workshop in a couple of weeks with some select business people in Wairoa and in Hastings, or in Hastings Napier. But just some high-level findings are that the rebound from the cyclone and flooding has been faster and more positive for many people than we expected. That's been the overwhelming response from businesses. Quite a different message, obviously, than we get from local government, which is understandable considering the pressure on your books, particularly around roading. But businesses are doing better than we expected, but some industries and areas are still doing tough, obviously, like horticulture, tourism, and forestry, and Wairoa has got some real concerns. And you, I hope, have seen the employment outlook also that I commissioned a couple of weeks ago from Infometrics, which says for Wairoa that there's only forecast 63 jobs over the next 5 years, which we hope does not come true. Economic conditions more widely are more of a concern for our businesses, so the downturn in China, domestic demand and the cost of capital. One thing that we've really noted, and the researchers have been particularly interested in, is that what they call a very significant linked ecosystem in the region associated with food production. So you've got the primary suppliers, processors, equipment manufacturers, solution providers, right across the board, right across the whole value chain, and a really interesting and high level of investment in the tech industry across all of those industries. So even industries that you might think are pretty old school, primary sector based, are doing a lot of investment in automation and robotics and data. That's been quite a standout in our finding. For the most part, family connections have been a major reason that businesses have been established here and continue to be here. They talk about good schools, good communities and family, and other advantages depend on the industry. So for example, the natural resource base here, if you're a horticulturist, climate, land availability, access to the port, airport, generally. But we've actually met very few businesses, like I can count them on one hand, that have come to Hawke's Bay out of nowhere without a previous family connection. And that's, obviously this is a sample of let's say 60 businesses, but just quite an interesting finding. And again, quite different to what other regions look like. And it suggests some things that we have to think about if we are keen to attract businesses to come here. There is definitely a risk of manufacturing heading offshore in the next years, and that's already happening. We've talked to quite a few businesses that are keen to keep their R&D and their finishing in Hawke's Bay, but the cost of manufacturing is no longer viable here. And we've talked to businesses that talk about labour cost in India being $8 a day with workers lining up down the street versus $28 an hour here for, you know, so-called low-skilled jobs, of which low-skilled jobs often don't exist anymore. There's a certain level of skill. The most common challenges across the sectors are roading and skills availability, and water and energy costs. Those input costs are really affecting everyone, but that's no different to the rest of the country. Skills availability comes up all the time. The general feedback that we get is that the labour market pressures have reduced a bit in the last 18 months, but we've got a looming issue potentially around the sort of unskilled or lower education roles where we're already struggling to attract and retain local talent, so in the horticulture and primary sector. But then equally in the advanced manufacturing space, of which we're starting to collect quite an interesting cluster of businesses, they really struggle to get the high-skilled talent that we need. So these are just some high-level findings. We're going to be testing them with businesses in November and potentially the what next and so what. And then we'll release all of our thinking to the public in probably around the 12th of December. We already know that there's some stuff that we can jump into right now. So one of them is exploring impact assessment on State Highway 2 to look at what is the potential to, if we could increase the resilience of State Highway 2 to open up the wider economy. But also, what's the counterfactual? What happens if we don't do that in terms of social and economic wellbeing up there? So we're just starting to look with NZIER, another research company, at how to build that case. We're also looking at doing a project with Tihei Takitimu around health outcomes for Māori. So Tihei Takitimu is the Māori Iwi Partnership Health Board. I got that around the right way. And so they have a responsibility to fight for equity and health outcomes for Māori. And so we're interested in working together to look at, to support their advocacy, what if we had a better understanding of what the direct costs of poor health outcomes for Māori are? And also, again, the counterfactual, how could Māori economic wellbeing be improved through better health outcomes? There's really good research elsewhere in the country and overseas that there's a direct benefit between better health outcomes and better economic outcomes. So we're having a look at that. We're also looking at supporting Food East with activating their facility over there. And I'm about to meet Karen Bartlett, the retiring MSD Commissioner, this afternoon to talk about a little bit more about what we could do around some of those labour market issues, labour force issues. You talk to lots of businesses here who say, we've tried everything to bring locals on board, but what have they tried really? Has it been evaluated? What works versus what doesn't work? I've talked to EIT about it. There's been a few little bits and pieces of research, but we think that there's an opportunity to do something far more structured around that. There's we've got, I think, a list of 30 things that could be followed up on and worked on further following this research once we test it and show it around with Matariki and with the board. So I think we might have already got up to 10 minutes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you very much. Sounds like busy times. And I guess just commenting on the review, looking at what's happened post-cyclone, we're sort of working within a different landscape, I guess, and that's driven the review happening. So it will be interesting for all of us, I'm sure, to see what comes out of that. So we'll just open up for any questions from councillors. Councillor Boak.
Yes, thank you very much. That was a really interesting report, and the employment projections are certainly very concerning, and I'm sure you're doing what you can. Just a couple of little questions. When Matariki was first put in front of us in 2016, they had this kaupapa, every household and every whānau is actively engaged and contributing to and benefiting from a thriving Hawke's Bay economy. Is that still your main kaupapa?
Yeah, that's still the vision of Matariki, and it's built into our founding documents as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the only other question I've got is on page 247, there's references to the beverage and tobacco product manufacturing, and I wondered what that was. What is the tobacco, beverage and tobacco? It's
was
one
an
of the top
Infometrics
10
report.
Job creating.
Yeah, so they work on NZIC levels, which is an industry classification level. So they go down, there's different levels in it. And so in that report, they've gone down to level 4, and it's just the overall classification. So beverage might be I think State of Grace is here in Napier as an example of the alcohol-free beverages that they create. And tobacco will be, I don't know if there is actually anyone that does tobacco production here, or I don't think so, but it would just be wrapped up in the NZIC classification.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you very much for the summary, both. I was particularly interested in the assessment or the work that you're proposing to do around State Highway 2. It's a road that I know a number of us travel regularly, and with our relationship with Craig, know how important that is to the region. I suppose what I'm interested in is, after the work's done, what do you see the pathway being for that work to actually kind of implement some change?
So we're using the example of Northland Corporate Group. So they are a group of businesses that got together in Northland, and I'm sure that you'll know about this, yeah. And they commissioned a piece of work from NZIER, and they have a methodology that they use, which is a 3-part methodology, but they surveyed businesses, they did some modelling of the road, and they did a couple of other bits and pieces to meet not only the needs of the NZTA business case, which are very narrow around benefit. They look at time efficiency on the roads rather than at the wider economic impact. But what they did is they had a whole comms plan around their piece of work, really, and they were playing the long game when they commissioned it, thinking that if they had in their back pocket a really good piece of evidence that showed the economic benefit of doing this piece of work, that they could use that over the coming years to advocate to the NZTA, to government and so on. And in their case, they were really successful in being able to do that advocacy early on and got funding already this year. In talking to them and to NZIER, it's unlikely that we'd make a shift with this current government in this term, but to have a really robust piece of work in the back pocket for Mayor Craig and others in the region to be able to advocate would just give a huge advantage for any of those discussions. Because at the moment, we can talk if you look at on the face of it, the Wairoa kind of contribution to GDP is very low. And so we'd have to make a really convincing argument that there is the possibility to open up economic opportunities up there, and that the lack of resilience is a barrier. So we're hearing that anecdotally. So if we can quantify that, so we can both quantify the opportunity that could be opened up and the quantum of the barrier, then we might have a better chance to advocate for that. So you can't just do the piece of research and leave it. There has to be a whole kind of comms plan and advocacy around it. But if we don't have it, we can't make the argument.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Gregg.
Yes, kia ora, Lucy and Karen. A question about your business hub today at 101 Queen Street, East Hastings. How are the bookable meeting spaces advertised to the public?
So we've got a website, we've got a bit of a digital activation campaign going on, word of mouth, we're about to get some signage up, so just the usual stuff, really. It's an interesting one because I think we spoke about that last time. It was a bit of a surprise to us to take that on as part of our role, and there was no business case under it. So we just inherited it. We've got a space, we've made the best of it, but there's a lot of public spaces available already in Hastings. So we just have to try to build business. We tried to price it in the middle of the market, but we also have tenants that have free access to that room as part of their tenancy, so the Chamber of Commerce and so on. So we're also limited in what we can do and what we can offer. And now we've got quite a lot of council use as well. So as long as shareholders are happy with that arrangement, then we just do our best to advertise it and get more use up. But if we want to staff it and have the level of manaakitanga that we show at the moment, then it's never going to break even. Yeah, to be blunt.
Councillor Crystal.
Just through the chair, just slipping back to the State Highway 2, are you also working with Tairāwhiti? Because obviously they have a huge amount of produce and stuff that needs to get out
That's
there,
right.
and that road severely affects them, and they've got some quite strong leaders up there.
They do.
Leader brand and stuff. So they part of that conversation?
Yes, they are, yeah. So I work with Trust Tairāwhiti, which is the economic development agency up there. So they're going to be involved in helping scope out that TOR. And they'll make a decision at that point about how involved they want to be. But I have talked with the researchers about they've said that the cost of adding that extra piece of road into the case is minimal, actually. But it would strengthen the case if we could also survey business in Gisborne and Wairoa. Different to the Northland case, where they've got some really big businesses up there that were really interested in that road. I've also asked them to come back and really think about how can they tap into businesses that are not already investing up there but have the potential to invest up there. Because Wairoa's got 60% of the surface water of Hawke's Bay, and there's some real opportunities for diversifying and growing their horticulture space. But there's also other opportunities up there around tourism, for example. But they're not going to be met with a road that washes out every 5 minutes.
Any further questions? Now, we do actually have on the agenda item 2, which is connected to this presentation. So I'm just going to leap forward to that rather than rounding back to it later on. Bill, as the reporting officer, did you have anything to add, or Lucy and Karen have covered off everything that?
No, I think it's been a thorough process. It's based on a solid letter of expectations, and I guess the next step would be to work out what the next 6 months looks like and agree those. But yeah, and I work closely with Lucy on every Friday. We have our meetings, and it's very useful to work out what is our lane as council and what is a regional lane as well, which helps define my role too.
Thank you. If there's no further questions or any general discussion, I'll ask for a mover and seconder for the paper, please. Thank you, Councillor Crown. Councillor Brown. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Brown?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you both for being here this morning and summarising the reporting and the activity that you've undertaken. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's around challenges and opportunities. I think we've all seen the commentary in the media that has resulted from the Infometrics report around employment, etc. And sort of in an MSM perspective, gone for the negative, but I see a lot of opportunity. I think you touched on it around technology, especially. So I think, Bill's challenged in the future with figuring out and helping us to support what is the next industry for Napier, making the most of the opportunities that do actually exist out there, and playing up those positives around whānau connections, around our climate in general, around the already established industries and the value add opportunities that exist connected to those as well. So it's great to have you guys here. It's great to have some focus in this area as a region. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how we translate some of this stuff and where council defines their lane and really helps to make an impact positively for Napier economically and for the region. So kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora. Just echoing what Councillor Crown said, we're already starting to see the fruits of your labour and the value of the research that you're doing. At the Climate Action Joint Committee, we were lucky enough to see a presentation from one of your team around some opportunities within process heat, which would also include using up waste wood, so moving Hawke's Bay more towards that circular economy, which is where we need to go. So thank you, your work's driving us in the right direction.
Thank you.
Councillor Vogue.
Yes, I'm supportive of this resolution too, but I just wanted to add it would be helpful if there are opportunities for us to advocate with central government on anything that we as governors have the brief for, that might help improve the situation of our people. So, but well done, thank you very much. It was a very comprehensive report. Thank you.
We've had 3 speak in support of the motion. Are there any speakers against? There being none, I will put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you very much, Karen. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you, and we'll see you at your cocktail tomorrow night.
Oh, fabulous. See you then. Okay, moving to announcements by the chairperson, which I will just mention our business gala tomorrow evening at the Napier War Memorial Centre, which of course is part of our 150 years celebrations. So would love to see you there if you'd like to come along and celebrate with us. Are there any minor matters not on the agenda? Any announcements by management? Confirmation of the minutes held on the meeting held on Thursday, the 26th of September. Mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Councillor Gregg. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right, now we'll move into our agenda items, and first up we have the adoption of the annual report 2023-2024. I invite Caroline up and Talia to present the paper, please.
Thank you. So I've got Talia Foster, our financial controller, up here with me today to assist with any technical questions, given her team were at the coalface of the audit. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the finance team and Audit New Zealand for the enormous effort that they have put into turning our annual audit around under a very tight timeframe this year. Hopefully, Karen Young, our Audit Director, will be online. I know she's had to attend Wellington City Council this morning, but she is aiming to be online to speak to our audit opinion and answer any other questions you may have. So for the 23-24 annual report, Council is reporting a net operating deficit of 23.4 million compared to a budgeted deficit of 14.1 million. Total operating revenue was ahead of budget by 10 million, mainly due to government grants relating to Cyclone Gabrielle, legal and insurance settlements. These favourable variances were offset by unbudgeted cyclone costs and higher than budgeted employee benefit expenses. At the time of writing the council report, audits were still completing the annual audit, and as a result there are a number of minor changes to the accounts which we have tabled today. We've received a qualified audit opinion relating to the performance measure for Three Waters fault response times. The sampling undertaken by audit identified some inaccuracies regarding the recording of resolution and attendance times for customer service requests. The audit opinion is hot off the press and it is also tabled in front of you today. I'll hand over to Talia so she can take you through the minor changes that have been tabled, and then if Karen does appear online, I'll ask her to talk to the audit opinion.
Thank you. So I've provided everyone a copy of the table of changes. I'll just run through the most important ones. We have included everything on here, including some minor wording changes and changes of pictures. So the most important ones that I want to draw your attention to on page one, on page one of the document in front of you, it refers to page 50 of the annual report, where we have added the footnote regarding the water performance measures. We have just updated this for the current year to explain that we have been qualified again this year, and the further issues identified in the current year will be addressed through training and process changes by the end of the 2024 calendar year. That note is carried over to page 60 and page 68 of the annual report so that it covers each of the three waters. On page 5 of the table of changes, it refers to a change on page 136 of the annual report. This is where audit picked up a mistake in how we had classified the severance payments.
Excuse me, sorry. I was wondering if you could just slow down. I'm just trying to see the original. We don't have a copy with these changes in it, do we? Is that
Yes.
on the hub?
It was provided by email and on the hub this morning.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Sorry. No, you can keep
It's probably easiest just to refer to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So page 136 of the document, severance payments, we had included the wrong payments initially, so audit have asked us to update the payments. We just misclassified which ones we were including. Then on page 7 of the table of changes, it refers to page 195 of the document. And that is where we have added the events after balance state for the local water done well and the Ahuriri Investments Management Limited, CCTO. So that is just audit identifying some of the important things that have happened that they would like disclosure on. And that's the most important ones for me to draw your attention to. Thank you. And it looks like we still don't have Karen available yet.
Okay, I'll open up for any questions. Councillor Crown.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I was wondering, first of all, congratulations for getting through audit. I know it was a very tight deadline. I'm wondering how much longer are we contracted to Audit New Zealand? Just out of curiosity.
Through the chair, we have, so our audit director rotates off after 6 years of service to us, and we have one more year left with Karen Young. I believe we've got 2 more years left on our audit contract.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Green.
Yes, through the Mayor, thank you. Just to confirm that we're going to update the vision statement and strategic objectives. I think they're on page 6.
For this annual report, we're reporting against the previous LTP. So we've included the previous vision statement, but we have also added a statement to that page around why it is the old ones and that we do have new ones available too.
Councillor Crystal.
Through the Mayor, just under the operating expenditure over budget, what are higher than budgeted employee benefit expenses? What does that relate to?
So employee benefit expenses is just another name for labour costs.
Okay.
And they are higher due to, we had made an allowance in our budget or an assumption that we would be carrying around 70 to 80 vacancies. That wasn't achieved.
Okay. Understand that.
Councillor Bowe.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I did send a couple of questions through. One was about the climate change strategy. Under significant initiatives, it said it was on hold. Is it still on hold now? And if so, why?
Yes, I do have a response for
Thank
you.
you.
I'm informed that the Joint Climate Action Committee will determine the work program and actions for climate change. The committee is currently undertaking a regional climate risk assessment, and while this work is underway, Napier City Council has put on hold the development and adoption of a climate change strategy, so the outcome of this work and what it means for Napier can be taken into consideration.
Right, okay, so it is, something's happening, cool. And the other one is just something I didn't really understand on waste minimisation, and I sent that question through. Page 78 says the year in review, quote, free household recycling is still available to residents, and we encourage customers to separate their green waste from general waste to receive a $6.50 separation discount. And I wondered what that referred to.
Oh,
You, Madam Chair, Maxine,
Sorry,
Oh,
Stephen,
sorry.
I need you to.
come up.
Hadn't you seen this question?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
Come up and use the mic.
do you want to come up here and answer it? So, with the mic. Thank you.
All right.
That'll be all right.
Through you, Madam Chair. Maxine, so with the green waste separation and the general waste separation at the Redcliffe Transfer Station is the general waste amount is a higher amount, and then we encourage people to separate their green waste from their general waste so they can pay a lesser amount on the green waste, and to incentivise them, we have that small discount of, it's gone up now to $6.90. We've got that in place to just incentivise people to do it, just because of the pit diversion that happens when they try to separate things and divert from landfill as much as possible.
Oh, thank you. So that's referring to the transfer station, what
Yes.
happens there when you take rubbish out?
Yeah,
Oh, thank
that's
you.
for the Redcliffe Transfer Station.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, in Karen's absence, Caroline and Talia, if you would perhaps be able to just give us a little bit of a sort of run through of the two sort of items within the Audit New Zealand Independent Auditors Report letter around the opinion. It's just a high-level sort of summary around what that actually means. So you've all got a copy of the auditor's report, and I'm referring to what is page 1, 2, 3, the basis for our opinion on the audited information. There's a couple of items in there which have been highlighted by the auditors.
Through the Chair. So the first one is related to our Three Waters revaluation from the prior year. So we had issues in the 2022 audit with the revaluation where we weren't able to get a revaluation in time. Because the 2022 figures now turn into the opening balances for our comparative year, we're still qualified this year for those figures. We have since had the revaluation last year, which indexed the above ground assets, and then the full revaluation this year, which indexed the below ground based on last year. But it means over the past 2 years, everything has been fully valued. The second one is to do with the water supply, wastewater and stormwater fault responses. So in prior years, we've had issues with this one as well. We've identified a lot of issues with how we were recording these measures. We've put a lot of work into updating our categorisation of the measures. So that's the service request when the public call in. We might not have full information at that stage as to what the issue is or which of the waters it relates to. So we're now ensuring that once a service person gets to site, they're identifying the correct categorisation and updating the system for that. Our final actions on that were put in place at the end of 2023, which means there is a short period for what audit we're looking at where the categorisations were still being updated and trained on. And they've also identified this year that the data entry still isn't quite up to scratch. So we've got some further training for data entry and changing some of our processes at the depot that we will have in place by the end of this calendar year.
Thank you, Talia. That's really useful. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, team, for the report, and I would echo the congratulations. I know it is difficult. I think this is one of the first years where we've had a qualified audit report on the day of the meeting rather than waiting for it, so well done. Quick question from me. One of the footnotes talks about, I think, the reporting system or the data collection system that we had for, was it Three Waters call-outs in particular, and in previous years we've needed to have an exclusion. Essentially, we weren't collecting data in the right way for it to be recorded. I see that footnote's been amended to include this last financial year. Does that mean we still haven't quite got to the level of data collection or data integrity that we need to in that space?
Yes, through the chair, that's correct. So that's right, Jesse. We will be trying to update that for by the end of this calendar year. So we hope to have that fixed for next time round. Because we are now partway through the financial year as well, it might mean that it's carried over again to next year, but we will be making every effort to get rid of this one that's been lingering now.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor Wise, I guess that was kind of my follow-up question, was our level of confidence around that, because it does seem to have been carrying on. This is our 5th year? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So we were quite confident in how much we had fixed for the past year. Unfortunately, there was another area that audits now identified, still to do with the data entry, which is why the wording hasn't significantly changed. But yes, it does mean further training is required.
So through the chair, just to be clear, it's a different issue, but in the same area.
If I could just, through you, Mayor Wise, is there an opportunity, I suppose, for audit to look at that in more detail? You know, I'd hate to get to the end of the next financial year and another data entry different issue is identified. How can we get some confidence around all the issues being identified to be included in this round of training so that we don't end up in this kind of rolling and this and this and this kind of situation?
Yes, we would certainly hope to get full information from audit this time on what they have looked at. We pulled, I think, 120 samples this year, which is significantly more than we normally would, so they should have had a lot more to look at, that we should be able to get, hopefully, full clarification on all of the issues this time around.
And also, we will be reporting this through our audit management report to the Audit and Risk Committee. So we'll be needing to update them on our progress and monitor what we're, the corrections we're putting in place to rectify this issue.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Brown.
Not so much a question, and just looking to you to whether this is appropriate to say now or later. Just the comment around our climate action and what Climate Action Joint Committee do is different to my understanding of what the climate action is going to present to us. Should I take that offline, or do we have that
offline?
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions, any general discussion? No? So I am happy to move from the chair. This is always one of those key milestones of our reporting cycle, so it's great to be able to adopt this within the timeframes this year. Well done to all your team. I know it takes a huge amount of work and effort, so thank you. If I could have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Mawson. And yeah, a challenging year, obviously, in terms of the cyclone definitely impacting our results. And it really is just a testament to everybody within the organisation that we were able to manage essentially as well as we did, and also work with our auditors to get the annual report done and adopted. So thank you to everybody involved in the process. Councillor Mawson.
Only just to add, thank you for all the copious amount of work that you and your team have done. Excellent work, thank you.
Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. We've dealt with item 2, which brings us to item 3, the housing strategy. And I invite Anne Bradbury and Thunis to the front to present to us, please. Welcome. Welcome.
Morena, councillors. I just want to say a few words around the strategy. And the first thing is that it's really good for us as a team to be able to bring this housing strategy to a final point where we can get hopefully get council's sign off. It's also good to have the sign off as it also relates to our housing divestment report that's up on number 8. And lastly, I just want to really thank the staff for what they've done because we've worked with this across the organisation, so it's not just community services, but also to Anne and Steph Murphy specifically. I would hand over to Anne.
Morena tātou. Thank you, Thunis. So we've brought this draft housing strategy to you earlier this year, and there were some recommendations about next steps, which were to look at the 3-year plan engagement and continue conversations with partners and stakeholders. So we have done that, and we've made a few changes to the draft strategy, which I've outlined in the report. The main change is changing the focus around the council's housing portfolio to older people, which follows on from the 3-year plan engagement. We've made some other amendments, including more emphasis on disability. One thing to note is that the strategy is not the end. Officers will continue to work on implementing the strategy in the 3 focus areas that the council is involved in. So focus area 3 is our sort of regulatory and housing provision, and as you're all aware, the future development strategy is part of kind of implementing this strategy and the district plan work that city strategies are doing. With focus area 2, it's the council's housing portfolio, and again, as you're all aware, the housing review is still working. We're still working through that review, and there's another paper at this meeting to talk about that. And then focus area 1 is around homelessness. So, as I said in the report, we are starting to work with territorial authorities in Te Matua Māui to create a regional action plan. Now, this process is just beginning because all councils are at different stages. We have created a homelessness in Napier report, and Hastings has a similar report. Central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa are kind of working to get to that stage, but all councils are really keen to work together on this to speak in one regional voice about to support our homeless whānau. So I just wanted to note that I was going to take the strategy to Ngāmanukunuku Otiiwi 2 weeks ago, but that meeting was cancelled. I was going to seek endorsement from that committee to bring the paper to council, but that committee was cancelled, but I will be taking this paper to the next Ngāmanukunuku Otiiwi meeting. So happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much, and I'll open up for any questions from councillors. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Tank, for the paper. Quick question from me on page 7 of yours, page 264 of our report. It talks around the roles in the housing continuum, and role 3 around housing provider still talks about social housing for us, and I just...
Yes, sorry, apologies, that's an error. I will delete and social housing if that's acceptable to
Yeah,
the
no,
committee.
very comfortable with that, thank you. Yeah, the rest of mine are comments, so thank you, Mayor Watt.
Opening up for any further questions from councillors. Councillor Tariha.
Kia ora, guys. Just one question about the local Māori housing providers that you engage with?
So we spoke to Mana Ahuriri and the development arm more than once, and we've also spoken to Te Kupenga Hora, who are not a housing provider, but work in the sort of homelessness health space, and so Mana Ahuriri's development arm, and K3.
Any further questions? Councillor Crown.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, guys. I was really interested in the 5 housing outcomes area, and I just wanted to compliment you, I think, on the potential success measures. I think they're really well articulated and in our lane. So that's the important thing to me. I have a little bit of concern around focus area 2, and I couldn't quite find where in our or in the strategy it is, but in our paper it says, as a connector, an advocate and a housing provider to ensure there are sufficient non-market housing options to community that cannot afford private rental or home ownership. I think that's very aspirational and certainly something as a sector, a wider sector we want to try and achieve, but I'm just concerned that that's putting a lot of responsibility on council and wondering if you had any comment around where you see us playing a part, because in my mind it's simply our the housing that we have available that we're looking to focus on our kaumātua and our elderly population. So just wanting to tease that out a little bit, because it sounds like we're kind of saying we're putting our hands up to be responsible for all of that.
And we're only responsible, through the chair, through the housing that we provide.
Yeah. So I just wanted to draw our attention to that, because it just felt, like we were kind of claiming responsibility for something that we may not be able to influence or deliver as such. It's a wider sector thing.
So through the chair, I'm happy where it lists that we're a connector and advocate, because that's, I think those roles sort of aligned to council. Is it the housing provider? That's the role that I think, is that the role that you're most concerned with?
I think it's to ensure sufficient non-market housing options. I think that's the catch-all.
Yes.
So perhaps some thought around how we articulate that a little clearer to just define.
I can take that.
Yeah, and I suppose through focus area 3, we're ensuring housing options, but not non-market options. So it's okay.
Should we take that away?
Yes,
and
please.
Yeah,
we can
sorry.
take it away and then come back, or just change it because we know what your intent is.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Any general discussion? I'll ask for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Bogue, seconded by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Councillor Bogue, do you wish to speak to that?
Well, thank you very much for this. It has been a long time coming, and a lot of work has gone into it. So it's very welcome to us as governors, and I'm sure to the staff as well, to have this strong foundation for our approach to this incredibly important issue, which spans local and central government, PSGEs, social service providers, government agencies, etc. So something that I find particularly encouraging is the strength of the emphasis on relationships, on building those relationships. We obviously are limited in what we can do, but those relationships will enable us to support and speak to and work collectively and collaboratively with those who are providing housing to those who we cannot. So well done. I'm really pleased to see this strategy in place, and I really look forward to seeing us going on with this very strong foundation and mandate to tackle and support this very important issue. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, team, for the paper. I'd like to congratulate you on, when I was reading through it, how consistent I thought it was with the vision and objectives that the council has developed. I know the space is a difficult one, and it is one that we have moved in terms of our approach on over the last few years, particularly into that enabling role and the focusing on the gaps which we think we're best placed to fill. So yes, I was very encouraged as I read through. I was sort of putting a critical lens on in terms of how consistent it was with our vision, and I thought at the end of it, I was really pleased to see. I think you've captured it very well. So, thank you.
Any further speakers? There being none, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Excellent. Thank you very much. And next we have the draft city-wide reserve management plan, and with Tanya and Amelia. Welcome.
Morena koutou. So we'll take the paper as read. We are seeking approval from council to publicly notify our draft citywide reserve management plan.
So I suppose in regards to our reserve management plan, we see this as council's commitment to our community. As it's, we outline how we enhance and protect our open spaces for everyone to enjoy. So obviously currently we have a reserve management plan dated 2000. So yeah, time for a refresh. A few things have changed. So
we've undertaken pre-engagement with the community. Council approved the review process in 2021. Pre-engagement was undertaken in 2022 prior to the cyclone, and we've incorporated that feedback into the draft plan that you have in front of you, alongside the feedback that Council gave us at the workshop that we held around this document. So the public submission or the public notification process will begin on the 8th of November and be open until the 28th of February.
And I'd also like to add, this has been a long time coming, so there have been quite a few staff and expert advice that was sought to come to this point. So I also wanted to thank Amelia for her time, the short time that she's been with us to get to the point where we are at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Certainly an incredibly important plan for all of our beautiful spaces throughout the city. So looking forward to going out for consultation and hearing what our community has to say on this. I'll open up for any questions. Councillor Crystal.
Just through the Mayor. Now, one of the areas here, memorials and donations.
Yes.
And I know that I've been approached by people that want to donate money towards park furniture and things. They've been told, basically, we don't want it, and because it costs too much to maintain them. I understand that, but surely there must be furniture and things being put into new playgrounds that we're building, and why aren't we directing those people towards those if they want to donate money for them?
So, through you, Madam Chair, we do that in terms of pieces of play equipment. So, items that are relevant to the project that we're doing, we do encourage that. I suppose the issue is if they have a specific item in mind that does come with high maintenance costs that isn't relevant to our project, I suppose that's where we'd probably, come back with that feedback.
And a couple of examples of that recently would be the spinner at the Gleeson Park playground. So money was donated by the Freemasons for that piece of equipment. And we're working with our local Rotarian club at the moment on some musical play equipment that they're contributing to Anderson Park. So, and there is a process for memorial seats as well. We have a form that people can fill out. It just requires that they cover the cost of that piece of equipment that they're donating.
Okay. So just again through the chair, so Taradale Residents Association have approached and basically got told no, we didn't want it. So they even asked with the revamp of the Taradale playground if they could do something there. So I don't know, there's mixed messages going on here, but yeah.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I'm not too sure of what conversations have happened in the past, but happy to talk to them regarding that. So we're always open for, obviously, because it reduces our costs. And if we can find something appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the Mayor. A couple of questions. You've got the ward boundaries in here, which have probably been superseded now after our representation review. That might just need a little tweak.
Sure.
Nothing major. And Onikawa Park, I couldn't see it listed in here under the priorities bits and pieces.
It should be, through you, Chair, it should be in the
I may have
sports
missed
ground
it.
list.
It was a very quick glance at it this morning, that bit. And we've got in here our two premier parks, I think it is, or sports grounds. What two are we considering our premier sports grounds?
Sorry, what was that? Sorry, which two are we?
Yeah, two sites, I think, are premier sports grounds.
What page is that reference on?
Don't ask me that one. Sorry. It's only 300 pages. That's in the figure that's come from the open space strategy. I'd have to double check that, but I can come back to you just to confirm. I suspect that it's McLean Park and maybe Nelson Park, but I can.
Oh, and Curry Park Island.
Yeah.
We can confirm that.
I'm just wondering if two should be three or
one's
not in there.
Yeah, normally McLean Park is pretty much with Nelson Park in terms of, when they're referenced, but we can clarify that.
Cool, thank you. It's good though.
And just to clarify with regards to those ward maps, we haven't actually got to the end of the process of the new wards being finalised as yet, so.
There have been no appeals or objections, so the final wards are set, but we need to go through a process of mapping those out properly with plans.
Okay, thank you.
So, we can adopt those changes through the process next year once we've had submission periods, if that satisfies the question.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just on page 289, under the heading Other Legislation, can we include fire control bylaws in that list of bylaws? I'm just thinking about the issue of fires on the Foreshore Reserve.
Yes, we can include that.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Just on that last point, in terms of discussion, I think there is a paper coming around disestablishing that bylaw because there's been some legislation change. It's not required for councils to have a bylaw in that space. So I just wonder if we should keep that open until that paper's been discussed.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I had a number of questions. Throughout the policy, there are a number of other policies that are referenced. So in particular, I was looking at, there's a naming policy, the donations and memorial policy, and the commercial activities policy.
Yes.
Where would we find those? And supplementary to that, are there any changes being proposed to those at the same time as we review this?
Yes, so we'll make, through you, Chair, sorry, we'll make those available with the supporting documents via the Say It Napier submission page for those. The Parks and Reserves naming policy is due for a review. We've begun the process to undertake that. The memorial and donations policy also needs to be just formalised, but we'll make those available with the supporting documents, and then, yeah, same with the commercial activities.
Thank you, through you, Me Wise. So just to clarify, those policies are currently in existence. We're not proposing any changes to them as part of this consultation round.
No.
However, if changes were proposed to them through the consultation, we could consider that at adoption. Is that a fair summary?
Those policies are internal policies, so I'm not sure if we would take on board submissions on those policies in particular through this process. No.
I suppose it depends on the changes that have been requested and the timing, I suppose, when we do adopt those policies as well. But it's something we could look at.
Yeah, through you, Me Wise, I'm just trying to get straight in my head what that process is,
Yeah.
because some of those seem fundamental to the objectives of the reserve management plan overall. And so if they are or aren't being considered at this time is what I'm trying to ascertain. The detail of those sub-policies, which I suppose we've created them as separate policy documents, but they could easily be appendices to the reserve management plan.
Yeah, so the Parks and Reserves naming policy is an existing policy that rolls over every 5 years as per our internal policy process. And I guess throughout the lifetime of this document, it may be reviewed again based on that 5-year cycle.
So just to get clarification, when we come to adopt after the consultation process, we will also be adopting all these sub-policies?
We will have those sub-policies formalised before we adopt through that internal process.
So through you, Madam Mayor Wise, that is our opportunity to have input into the detail of those subsidiary policies?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Oh. Sorry, just to help, help with that question. The policies are more a management process to help guide staff when interpreting and delivering projects and outcomes on the reserve management plan. So that is why they have a different renewal rate and a review rate than the reserve management plan. So, excuse me. So we can look at if there are changes that council wish to make in terms of how we manage that activity going forward. That's the process where we can help manage that. So at this point, yeah, they are going through the review process because they're at their end of the current review period. So not necessarily a legal requirement under the Reserves Management Act, but it's how council maintains that standard through the activity.
So what I'm hearing is there will be an opportunity for elected members to have some input into those reviews of those policies.
Yep.
And also just to confirm, if we were to receive some feedback via submissions on the reserve management plan that relate to those policies, there's an opportunity to consider those as part of the policy review as well.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wise. That was helpful. I have a couple of other questions. I'm not sure if you'd like to take them all at once. Or thank you. In section 5.1 around environmental sustainability, I was surprised not to see a reference to the MPS for Indigenous vegetation, or in particular some of the initiatives that council's indicated support for, like rewilding. Why would that be?
So we see the individual and group management plans as the place where we would include detail around rewilding, revegetation, those sorts of things. So when we come to do the group management plan for the recreation and ecological linkages, that's where we would identify specific opportunities to carry out those activities.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. And that's not being considered now, the detail of those?
No, so we're seeking feedback on the citywide reserve management plan, and following this process, we'll undertake the individual and group reserve management plans, and that's where the community has an opportunity to give really reserve-specific feedback on what they'd like to see.
Thank you. Just flagging, do you think it's appropriate in the citywide plan to include that reference through to the MPS for Indigenous vegetation?
If you consider that it is, yeah, we can include that.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Wise, just a question in Appendix 2, it talks around delegations. I'm just confirming there's no proposed changes to delegations either under the RMA or in this policy than what we currently have?
No proposed changes.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Wise, are you able to talk me through how the vision and objectives of council have been taken into account during the development? I was particularly interested in the non-statutory documents section. Neither in the strategy or policy section does it talk about council's vision and objectives. They don't feature.
I would say that's a reflection of the fact that this document, the lifespan of this document is likely to be 10 or more years, where the council visions reflect the LTP cycle. So we haven't specifically referred to the current LTP visions because they may change over the course of the life of this document.
Supplementary to that, Mayor Wise, would you consider it appropriate to reference council's vision and objective, noting that they change over their cyclical? However, council will always have a vision and objective, and that should be a matter for consideration.
Sure, yep.
Thank you. Getting close to the end of my list, if that's all right, Mayor Wise. In the acquisition and divestment policy, I was slightly uncomfortable. It talks about that one will be developed in the next 12 months, and I assume with the input from elected members. But then it goes on in 1.3.4, which is page 297, to sort of set out that policy principle. And so it seemed a little back to front to me that we were saying we'll develop a policy, but here are the, in consultation, but then here are the principles. And so my question is 1.3.4 necessary if we're then going to go and develop the policy?
So the inclusion of those policies was based on feedback from the workshop with councillors to see an indication of what that direction would look like in that policy.
Would it be more appropriate to take that into the development of the policy rather than here if we are going to develop a separate policy?
Yeah, yep, sure.
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So seeking to remove then policies 1.33 and 1.34.
Through you, Mayor Wise, very comfortable with just the statement that a acquisition and divestment policy will be developed over the next 12 months, and you can obviously take all the guidance you've received from workshops into that development process.
Sure.
And then my final one is a process question. The classifications of particular reserves that are set out in here, what is the process for reclassification initiation? I can imagine through submission process you may get that sort of feedback, and I'm just wondering, is that appropriate to be considered at this stage, or is that an ad hoc thing? How is that managed?
Through you, Chair, that would be something we would look at the individual reserve management stage. That's where we detail the specifics of each reserve. And so if that came up as a submission point, we would consider it then. But the classifications are based on Recreation Aotearoa and Reserves Act guidance on the specifics of each reserve based on their primary use.
So supplementary to that, Mayor Wise, if there was a submission, a sports park is no longer required, it's moved to one of our other areas as an example, the community would like it considered as a different type of reserve, we would consider that as part of the individual reserve management plan. What if that is then inconsistent with the classification given in the citywide?
Then we could address that through the individual reserve management plan or group management plan process, and the process for changing the classification of reserve Council has delegation from the Minister of Conservation to change the classification of a reserve, so we would go through a process with Council to do that.
So through you, Mayor Wise, do we need a statement in this citywide policy that the individual reserve management plans take precedence in terms of classification over the citywide? Because you could end up with a situation where you have a difference of classification if you've adopted this and then later on there's a reclassification process dealt with through a different policy.
We can investigate that and just maybe check with our lawyer around the technicalities of that and what the precedence of, or, the hierarchy of the documents is.
Thank you. I think that would be valuable. And that's the end of my list. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Thank you. Excuse me. Liquor licences. I understand there's a clause there, 2.8 liquor licences, so that applications can be made for liquor licence on reserves. Is the default that parks and reserves are liquor ban areas, or is it only the areas that are specified in our LAP, our local alcohol policy? Do you know?
I don't believe they're default liquor ban areas unless they're specified as liquor ban areas, but I'd have to familiarise myself with
And the specific clubs, if they've got liquor licences, would have a ringed fenced area sort of where they can, supply and have alcohol. So, yeah.
So, on the other hand, are people able to drink on the foreshore or, just on the parks and reserves? Is that allowed without a licence? I mean, just recreational drinking?
The foreshore specifically, I believe, is a liquor ban area, but I don't think so. I'd have to double check.
It might be helpful to specify that if that's the case, because people may not realise that.
Yeah, we'll investigate that.
All right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the smoke and vape free. We do have a policy on that, and I think I understood. I haven't looked it up, but that our parks and reserves are smoke and vape free areas. Is that so? Can anybody correct me
I'm
on
not
that?
too sure on that. I know playgrounds off the top of my head, but I'm not too sure if that applies to the wider park and reserve area. So it's something else we can look at.
It just might be good to specify what areas are smoke and vape free in parks and reserves, if that's okay within the.
I suppose if that policy does change down the track, then ours doesn't. Something would work through with the people that enforce those policies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Just noting that there has been, through the course of the questions, some suggested amendments. So in terms of the officer's recommendation, I think we just need to amend that slightly, that approve the draft citywide reserve management plan for public consultation, subject to the amendments discussed in today's meeting.
Okay.
Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Gregg and Councillor McGrath. Would you like to speak to that?
No, thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, if this was last done in 2000, well done for getting it out there, and let's get it out to consultation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
you.
I'm sure you're pleased to have passed this next milestone. Quick one next, the 2025 Napier City Council meeting schedule, and we do have what are the actual changes?
Sorry. Through you, Mayor Wise, it's the new schedule for next year.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, it's a sec. Are there any questions? Pretty procedural. Councillor Crystal?
I did notice through the mayor that the standing committee meetings are all on one day now.
That's correct. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we are going to trial having all 4 standing committees on the same day. We're finding that we have some standing committees that are don't go ahead or have a very light agenda. So to maximise the use of your time and the officer's time and the costs of hiring a venue, etc., we felt it was worth giving it a try to have them all on the same day.
Any further questions? Happy to move. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Anna. I look forward to seeing how that particular change rolls out. I think we all have noticed the increase in workload this term in particular, so if there's any opportunities for efficiency for staff time as well as our own, I think that is wise, so thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Nothing further to add.
Any further speakers?
Yeah, I'm going to watch this with interest because it makes for quite a repetitive day.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Crystal.
Just to note, I don't think it'd be wise to schedule workshops on that day as well.
No, so no, that's right. We would only do that if it was clear that there was going to be a large amount of time available.
Yeah.
But moving standing committees away from one Thursday will free that up perhaps for workshops.
There's no further speakers. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, moving on to information papers, minutes of joint committees. We just have the one joint committee minutes from the Clifton to Tongariro Coastal Hazards Strategy Joint Committee. Are there any questions from elected members with regards to those minutes? No, could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Pareha, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you.
No, that's
No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Action points register. Open up for any questions. Is there anything of particular note that you wanted to comment on, Anna?
Not that comes to mind, sorry.
Thank you. Are there any questions from elected members? No. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Councillor Mawson. Any comments? No. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And we will move now on to the housing divestment paper. We've got a team here, Steph and Anne, to talk to the paper, please. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'll take the paper largely as read, but the purpose of the paper today is to provide an update on the housing divestment project and to outline the recommended program and procurement process for the project going forward. Just to highlight that this was as a result of the conclusion of 2 decisions that were made during the 3-year plan process. So decision 1 is regarding, excuse me, a shift in the focus to retirement only and divest of the social villages being Carlisle, Nelson and Wellesley villages, which relates to the topic of discussion you've had on item 3 this morning, and also deliver council's strategic housing priorities under a mixed or independent delivery model. So in the paper, as I've outlined, the 2-step procurement process, stage 1 is effectively calling for expressions of interest, and that will be approaching both local, national, community housing providers, as well as submitters on the 3-year plan. There have been other locals who have shown an interest in the process post the 3-year plan decision, and we will also be contacting them and asking them to submit a expression of interest as well. Then moving on to a review process from the expressions of interest coming in and shortlisting those to take through to stage 2, which is a request for proposal. I just would note that depending on the outcome of stage 1 will depend on the timing and also the shortlist of stage 2. The second part of the paper just highlights I guess, Council's deliberations in relation to a submitter, which was Abbeyfield Hawke's Bay, through the 3-year plan process, and I've just noted the resolution there for reference. So just to summarise, staff have been working with Abbeyfield to discuss potential options for some sites in Napier, and I am recommending in the paper that we proceed with due diligence and feasibility study of the Green Meadows East site at 83 Tate Drive and discuss commercial terms with Abbeyfield. As part of that, I'm also recommending that we review the Essex Street Reserve, which was also a site that was noted as part of the resolution, for suitability for an alternative residential status and to effectively take that reserve potentially through a process to revoke its reserve status under the Reserves Act. Just to highlight, there are some risks associated with this process, and I think one of them is the considerable policy changes, as I've outlined in the paper, in relation to new government policy settings around new net housing and things in relation to subsidies that have previously been available to housing providers are no longer available under the new policy changes, and that does pose a risk for us in relation to net new housing. Also to note there that there are several other councils, this is a risk for us in relation to market conditions, who are currently underway with their divestment processes very similar to us, either at one end where we've just been as far as reviewing housing strategy, or actually are currently in the market calling for expressions of interest to divest their either social or their full villages. The other final aspect in here is just to note that there is, at this point in time, based on the advice we've been given from Willis Legal, no legal impediments to the sale of the social villages. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Steph. Just referring back to the workshop, and we had discussed the two-step procurement process being run past our independent chair of Audit and Risk Committee.
Yes.
Has that happened?
That has happened.
Yep.
I've had a discussion along with Caroline Thompson earlier this week with Bruce Robertson, the chair, in relation to several matters. So the first was in relation to the advisory group that we have proposed, which was to consist of yourself, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bogue. He is supportive of that, but is to acknowledge that it is we need to be very sure about the terms of reference and make sure that that it is a governance activity that you're undertaking. And for that reason, he does not recommend that any of the members of the advisory group actually sit on the expression of interest panel, because that is acknowledging your governance role versus your advisory group and ensuring that those two aspects are separate. He is recommending that we have someone independent on the expression of interest panel, and that is a discussion that we're about to have as to who would be appropriate, who has experience probably in housing divestment processes.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. That was a similar question I had around the Housing Advisory Group's governance oversight of the expression of interest and request for proposal. Being that the recommendation is not to have any governance involvement in the expressions of interest and the request for proposal, without a clear terms of reference and criteria to assess the applications against, and there being no oversight, which is what I thought was just going to be added to this paper essentially when we discussed it, I'm really uncomfortable now moving forward without knowing what those are going to be assessed against.
So through the chair, if I can just refer to, I guess, the 5 strategic priorities. We have set those as part of the resolutions process for the 3-year plan, and as per normally you would in any form of tendering, expression of interest process, there will be additional criteria that will be set, largely in relation to experience, price, etc. And it'll be the role of the evaluation panel that will actually finalise those. And I would suggest through the advisory group, we actually bring those back to you, so you're aware of actually what they are.
So through you, Mayor Wise, can we frame that up into something really succinct for me that possibly we could add into the resolution that might give me some confidence, sort of moving into that next step then? So, yeah, because my second question was sort of flows on, I guess. So what you're proposing is that the evaluation board is guided by something which is first approved by the advisory group. What I'm really, sorry, through you, Mayor Wise, what I'm really struggling with is, yes, we have our strategic priorities. We haven't discussed the weighting of those strategic priorities. We know there'll be a range of complexities in the different EOIs and requests for proposals that come through that deliver those in different ways and at different levels. I'm looking for some confidence in how governance has the oversight of guiding that.
I think. Were you going to say something?
No.
Sorry.
Because where we got
yes.
to in the workshop is
yes.
very different to what's now being brought to us.
So, Chair, I mean, I haven't been privy to the conversation with Bruce, but from my experience previously, this is not an unusual recommendation that the independent chair is giving. From my take, and please correct me if I'm wrong from the conversations you've had with Bruce, is what the advisory group, which would consist yourself, the Mayor and Councillor Bogue, could do is work with the team and this independent to frame up some of those criteria, but you wouldn't be involved in the actual procurement process because what we have to do is ensure you keep it safe. So I think, Deputy Mayor, you're seeking confirmation that you would be involved in scoping and advising the criteria, but you won't be involved in the assessment. And is that what Bruce is suggesting?
That is correct. Sorry for not quite explaining that, but yes, that is correct, Louise. Yep.
So it still will sit with you, but you won't be involved in the procurement process, is what I'm hearing Bruce's advice was. The chair of the
Correct.
Audit and Risk Committee.
So through you, Madam Mayor, usually the way that would come to us is the approval of a procurement plan then that has that criteria. Are you proposing that the procurement plan we're giving delegation to the advisory committee to approve the procurement plan?
I think we need to be careful that we're not then stepping into the advisory group then actually approving a plan that could then ultimately come to you as a council. That we just need to be careful that we're not confusing the two different roles that the advisory group will provide, which is to provide guidance to the project team on how we're actually undertaking the process, and a discussion on the criteria, and I think that's correct in the criteria, but not actually a physical, the actual overall plan itself. I'm just slightly, I think the way that Chief Executive described it just before is how it would work.
I agree. But what I heard from the Chief Executive was that there would be a set of criteria that would guide the procurement.
Yes.
And what I'm saying is usually that would be an endorsement of a procurement plan. And you're saying no to the endorsement of the procurement plan. So
through the chair,
confused.
Again, apologies because I'm coming with limited information. So I would anticipate, and I may be incorrect, that this working party or group would work with that independent person to come up with some key criteria. So obviously the key drivers for us would be our normal approach to procurement, in addition to your strategic vision and priorities. And there may be other criteria that you want to consider, and that's what that working group with the independent representative would be forming. Then that would form the basis of that procurement discussion with our potential providers. So you wouldn't be signing off the procurement plan, because that would be operational, but what you would be doing is at a governance level, setting the criteria of the requests that will go out for parties that are interested.
I'll let the conversation continue and I'll try and get that straight in my head if that's all right with you, Mayor White.
Yeah. Or maybe perhaps, through the Mayor, perhaps we're misunderstanding your concern, how we solve the concern that you've got. We perhaps don't quite, maybe we're not quite understanding the concern. So apologies if we're not answering your question.
I guess the concern, what I'm hearing, is that where is the governance oversight and input in terms of setting the criteria which the expressions of interest are going to be assessed against?
Yeah, and further to that, Mayor Wise, is you're asking us to approve 2 steps of the process without any confirmation of governance oversight. So you're moving from EOI into request for proposal, which will naturally see some parties drop out without any governance oversight of what that criteria is that you're assessing those that you will drop out.
Through the chair, and maybe the recommendation can be slightly tweaked to the resolution to confirm this, but I am recommending we undertake an overall 2-step process, including stage 1's calling for EOI and stage 2 calling for RFPs. I'm not recommending that we go straight to an RFP or who the expression of interest parties are. I'm just outlining the overall process that we're proposing to undertake is a 2-step process, not the specifics of an RFP process. Does that make sense? As in, it's the overall process is a 2-step process.
So through the chair, perhaps the issue we're trying to solve is we maybe need something in the recommendations that acknowledges the creation of this group, the independent chair, and the role that they have. Would that give you the assurance that you're seeking?
Yes, what their role is what I'm looking for confirmation of. And if we're appointing an independent, how that is done. Who are you giving that delegation to?
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I questions along the similar line, but what I wanted to ask was, are we moving away from a usual process?
No.
No. So in my mind, I think the bit that was missing from the paper for me was that sort of roadmap or process chart which shows the milestones. So it was almost a little too high level. And the criteria is certainly what was missing for me. And I wondered, I actually didn't quite understand what was meant by alternative options presented to parties to maximise the housing outcomes to deliver NCC's strategic housing priorities. This needs to ensure the assessment criteria are not overly restrictive. So that was a red flag to me because I didn't know what that could mean around criteria. So I think that we all have similar concerns. It's a bit high level. Not enough detail at this stage, and I'm really interested in that process because I was reflecting on what we've done with Te Aka and thinking about that process and how it stepped through the different gateways to approval, that process. So I was looking for that kind of approach.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a question about relating to point 1 of the officer's recommendation. How and when are we going to communicate the timings of this housing divestment to the residents of the social housing?
Through the chair, we will be writing a letter to tenants, depending on what happens with the paper. If this is approved, we will be writing a letter to the tenants and delivering it to them tomorrow if this paper is approved today. So we want to it'll be a similar message to what we've told them over the last, through this calendar year, but we just want to keep front-footing that and make sure that we provide the first point of news to the tenants.
Councillor Boat.
Just another question. Are we seeking expressions of interest to purchase the land and the buildings? And if so, do we have to take any decision back to the consultation with the community?
So through the chair, yes, in relation to decision one, the resolution from the 3-year plan was to shift the retirement focus to retiree only and to divest of the social villages being Carlisle, Nelson and Wellesley Street. And we use the terminology divest because that then provides the ability to be able to either have other forms of divestment, whether or not it is, for example, a lease situation, because that could well be an option that comes through as part of the expression of interest process.
That covers, we don't need to go back for
That is
consultation.
correct,
Thank you.
yes.
Any further questions before we have a look at the recommendation? And I can see the Deputy Mayor beavering away on what I hope is going to be some wording to add to it. No further questions.
Can I just ask one question? How will the appointment of the independent person work in your mind?
That is a brief discussion that we had with the Chair of Audit and Risk, and through the process that he provides counsel, it would be a discussion with him, coming up with a short list to be approved by the advisory group.
We may take just a short break. We're coming close to 2 hours anyway, so we'll just have a quick 5-minute break, everybody, and then we'll reconvene to finish off this paper. And then after that, we will actually jump ahead to agenda item 12, just because I'm aware Councillor Brown needs to be here for that paper and she needs to duck away at 10 to 12. So if we could all be back at 11:28. The officer's recommendation, which we're just in the process of typing up. Do we have the ability to bring those on the screen, Gemma? Yep, so we'll pop those up on the screen in a moment. Perhaps if someone who's close enough could read them out. Do you mind, Anne?
Yeah, that's fine. Receive the paper entitled Housing Divestment. Recommendation A, appoint Councillor Bogue, Mayor Wise and Deputy Mayor Brosnan to the Housing Governance Advisory Group. B, to delegate to the Housing Governance Advisory Group to appoint an independent member to the Housing EOI and RFP Evaluation Panel with the support to the Chair of Audit and Risk, of the Chair of Audit and Risk. C, note the Housing Governance Advisory Group has oversight of the EOI and the RFP assessment criteria. And D, note Council retains the final decision on the housing delivery model and divestment.
And then it's retention of the other two, original two parts of the recommendation. Okay, just open up for any further questions on that. Okay. Any general discussion? Could I therefore have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Happy to second from the chair. Would you like to speak to that? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us the time to work through that, to just obviously provide some confidence around governors having the ability to be involved in that assessment criteria establishment, because obviously that will be what will identify who will work through the procurement process in terms of the expressions of interests and requests for proposals that we received. Are there any further speakers to the motion? No. So I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much. Right, as I noted, we are going to skip now to agenda item 12, the Joint Waste Assessment and Waste Management and Minimisation Plan. We've got Stephanie Wilson to present the paper to us.
Always got a motion.
Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. We are presenting our joint waste assessment today, and we would just like to acknowledge that Kimberly Hope from Tonkin and Taylor is currently online, and we also have Ange and Geordie from Heretaunga Hastings Council here with us today, and Reynolds from Te Whatu Ora, all part of the project team thus far. I will take the report as read, but we would like to just provide some context around the report. The purpose of today's report is that Council receive the completed joint waste assessment report, approve that we revoke the current joint management and minimisation plan, and proceed with the development of a new WMMP. Note that the draft final WMMP will be presented to the Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Committee, as well as both councils in December of this year. The council also received that the Joint Waste Futures Committee has considered the current WMMP to be revoked and agreed that we develop a replacement WMMP for the next 6 years. We would also like the approval that the delegation to the Joint Waste Futures Committee is there to be, so that they can adopt the joint WMMP after the completion of the consultation and hearing procedures. So we've prepared just a few slides to just help understand the entire joint waste assessment report a little bit better. So just in terms of what our joint waste assessment means for us and what it is that it is a very technical document with a lot of information in there that helps us, once it's been analysed, to help us identify the services in terms of our waste streams that we currently have, the volume of waste across Hastings as well as Napier, and identify the different kinds of waste streams that we have, the infrastructure that we have here, as well as any circular economic activities that we currently have. And from there, we are able to build on what does the future look like. And from here, we created the vision, our goals, the objections and targets, and how we actually future-proof ourselves when it comes to waste in the district. And then we will look at the different ways of how we actually achieve that going forward over the next 6 years. So some of the next slide is about our strategic context, and these are just some of the factors that we've had to take into consideration to develop our strategic framework that is suitable for both Heretaunga Hastings and Ahuriri Napier. The details of that is in the report on page 5. So just an overview of what it looks like currently for the waste disposal per capita. It's been a steady decline in the region. However, as you can see with the last 3 graphs, it's gone up slightly, and that was due to the pandemic. We've also had very unfortunate weather events, and exceptional to Gabriel, and the increase is slightly higher up there. We also have quite a lot of commercial activity that we don't have an awful lot of information available due to it being commercially sensitive. Through working through this massive joint waste assessment that we've done, we've identified these 10 key focus areas, and it's also aligning with Te Rauki Para, the National Waste Strategy. Through this, we've also identified some of the actions. So within our the current WMP, we had 55 actions to complete. 30 of those were completed successfully. 13 are still on track or in process to be done. 10 have not been completed, and 2 of those actions are no longer relative. We have had challenges, and again, it's due to the pandemic and unfortunate weather events and staff changes for us. And so where we want to be is obviously the next 6 years, and we would just like to acknowledge the hard work from the Joint Waste Futures Committee that's gone into this to help develop our strategic framework. Our Māori partnerships teams across both councils really guiding us in our approach with developing the relationship with and enhancing the relationships that we have with mana whenua, and giving us that direction in how they can be part of the development of our new strategic plan. And then also working through our targets and just understanding where we can be, especially in a really dire economic challenges that we are facing. So this is just an overview. There are more details on page 16 going into the objectives on how we will meet our goals and ultimately the vision. So through working through workshops with our Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Committee, they came up with an incredible vision that it is normal for our communities to waste less and work in partnership and value our resources in order to protect Te Taio. Some of the 3 of those goals are exactly from the National Waste Strategy, and we added that extra one in there to enhance partnership with mana whenua, communities and the commercial sector to improve resource recovery and diversion from landfill. So how we go ahead and actually implement it is in our joint waste assessment report, and that is in Part 3, Section 7, that you can find all the details there. And how do we get there? We need to look at what the targets mean for us going forward, along with cost implications to that. If we stay the way we are, we will not be decreasing our volumes to landfill at all. We acknowledge that and with the 6-year plan that we've got and the economic challenges that we face, that we will break it up into a 3-year and a 3-year period for both, or for the whole project, so that within the first 3 years, our priority options would be in our C&D pilot projects that we've got, and doing a feasibility study on organic waste, and then later on look into more details of a resource recovery park. We will just not go, if we want to do more in this space, of course we would need to invest, but we want to be very mindful of how we end up using planning our budgets and using the money that we have available. And we've got some of these projects already planned in the 3-year long-term plan, and assuming that it can go ahead. So this is what the impact options look like in terms of the costs, with that realistic first 3 years and then the stretch for the next 3 years of that. If we want to invest, it would need to provide value for money and offer tangible contributions to the vision and goals of our waste management and minimisation plan. So yeah, we will first look at those feasibility studies and business cases before we do anything. So what we recommend with our approach is really that enabling of partnerships, collaborating with other partners, and that's been our entire kaupapa has been to be on that journey for that. And looking at alternative funding opportunities, as well as the increase in our waste levy fund that we receive from MFE. And then to just, lastly, a big part of completing our joint waste assessment was getting the Medical Officer of Health's feedback on this. We had really good feedback from her, this is Bridget Wilson, and they were very supportive of the way that we want to move forward with our approach, and our Joint Waste Futures Committee really supported the recommendations offered by the Officer of Medical Health. So that is just that, one part of the report today, and then the other part of this paper is also to request that Napier City Council delegates responsibility and authority to the Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Committee to adopt the final joint WMMP after the consultation period. We request, this request will also be made to Heretaunga Hastings District Council. The Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Committee have equal representation from both NCC and HDC, with 3 members from us and 3 members from Heretaunga Hastings. This committee already has the delegation to receive and hear submissions from consultation. NCC will be involved in the development of the joint WMMP, with a workshop scheduled in the middle of next month. The final draft will be presented to Council prior to public consultation. We are also planning a number of pre-engagement sector sessions, and due to this, officers are not expecting the final document to differ much from the draft that will be presented to Council in December. The purpose of this request is to reduce the risk of the Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Committee completing the consultation process, finalising the WMMP document, and then recommending the final version separately to each council, who may then make changes that are not in line with previous work or not in line with the other council. We have also taken it into consideration from the Local Government Act that allows for this delegation to sit with the Joint Waste Futures Committee. Any questions?
Thanks, Stephanie. Any questions? Councillor Gregg.
Oh, yes, through the Mayor. Just a question about on page 55.1.333, the officers visited 100 businesses for pre-engagement ideas and suggestions. The question is, did officers visit major fast food retailers, considering how much street litter is from these sources?
Through you, Madam Chair. Angela, would you mind answering that one on behalf of us?
Through you, Mayor Wells. Kia ora koutou, ko Angela Atkins Tokuinga. I'm the Waste Planning Manager for Hastings District Council and the Project Manager overall for the project. So the businesses was as part of our early engagement phase back in May, when we had an online platform that was available on both council websites, and it was just a door-knock exercise around primarily the Hastings CBD area, because that's our staffing allocation at the time allowed for that. We haven't specifically approached fast food outlets. That is not an issue unique to either Napier or Hastings. It's an international issue that is faced, but there'll be an approach to that. And the the further engagement sessions that we'll be holding in a couple of weeks' time are specifically for 7 different sectors across our more commercial and business sector. So we're having a hospitality and a retail session where we're inviting people specifically to come in so we can talk around all things waste related to that, and then we'll do rural, commercial and industry and alike.
Just further to that, could you invite those managers of the fast food outlets? Because I think that would be effective.
Noted.
Any further questions? Councillor Crystal. Through the Mayor, just following on from that, supermarkets are a huge contributor and have a lot of drive in this area in who they buy from and their suppliers. So do we have any kind of discussions with them on this point? Are the supermarkets part of the kaupapa?
I'm happy to answer that. Through you, Madam Chair. Again, that's part of our pre-engagement and targeting the specific sector engagement. I am not fully aware of any major supermarket chains being on our specific list, but we could reach out to that group definitely too.
It's just through the chair, they have, I know I used to be a supermarket, a huge influence. They have actually the ability of who they buy from, especially the independent ones.
Yeah.
And they can drive packaging changes, and it's something, I know it's probably from the head office, but I just think it's something that it is a lot of waste that you see in people's garbage bins is from
the supermarket,
wrapped fruit and all that sort of stuff.
And that is also something that we do through our engagement with community groups and when we're out at home and garden shows jointly, is that education of how much we as consumers ourselves have the right to say no and refuse and work through our waste hierarchy rather than just the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff being the recycling. It's great. We've got our soft plastics bins in our supermarkets. They are on board with that. I know that a lot of head office people do sit also on our plastic forums committee so that we are aware of these things and can drive change. The fact that yogurt bottles will be banned because it's a number 6 polystyrene plastic. Single-use items are no longer going to be available for certain products. but definitely welcoming people to come to our sector engagements and just continue our behavioural change education with people to say that, yeah, it can take 6 years for government to put something in place, but how about us walking into the supermarket, making those changes and just swapping things out, small things out regularly until it becomes a habit and working on your own waste going forward. Yeah. I will make note on inviting supermarkets.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, will the final plan include the resourcing levels required to deliver the plan?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, through you.
And just secondary to that, I'm wondering, are there restrictions as to what the waste levy funding can be used for?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, the criteria is very strict, and that is why we align every single action to meet that criteria. Not every single action in our final WMMP will be monetary. You won't need to spend money on it, but anything that we need to, it needs to align back, and that's also why we've gone with the approach of aligning ourselves with Te Rao Takipara.
Thank you. I guess I'm just noting that I guess a risk in my mind as a governor would be that we don't have the resources in, to be able to deliver the plan. So I just wanted to check around that and understand, I suppose the parameters for the funding and what that can be used for as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Just noting a couple of key parts of the recommendation here is that the draft WMMP will come back to councils for approval prior to consultation, but we are actually giving delegation to the project steering committee to make the final decision around adoption. So just so that's clear in everybody's minds. So if there's no further questions or discussion, could I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brown and Councillor Tariha. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. Kia ora, through the chair. I suppose I just want to really start by saying a huge congratulations to the team. This is literally a rubbish job at times, and they've been up to their elbows in waste sorting through to get the information for the waste assessment. I'm really comfortable as a Napier City Councillor Governor to be giving that direction to the committee. I think there's a few ways that we've already as a council had the input. You'll note the vision and goals on page 94 reflect our Napier City Council vision and strategic priorities. We've had a big strong theme on enabling our community through partnerships, and that's already working really well with Mana Whenua and Reno being here to support us from the Ministry of Health. On page 231 of the attachment, or 151 of the waste assessment, you can see the criteria that we've put forward, and that all of our actions that are in the long list of possible things we could do have been assessed against that criteria, which again reflects our vision and priorities. And as Steph mentioned, we have a joint workshop coming up on the 22nd of November, which will be all of us, Hastings, and our Mana Whenua partners, so we have input into the draft before it goes to consultation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Tariha.
Kia ora team. Not much further, just I'm pretty sure Hastings will also be in the line with us, and just big mihi to the team, and I'm comfortable with supporting this, and I know that the chair of the committee is real passionate about this mahi, and kia ora guys.
Okay. Any further speakers? I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, and now back to agenda item number 9, review of gambling venues policy. I think we have Michelle with us. material. Welcome.
Tag teaming. Tēnā koe Mayor Wise, tēnā koutou councillors. This paper gives you an update on the review of Council's gambling venues policy and seeks your approval to retain the policy in its current 2021 form. As you know, territorial authorities have a role under both the Gambling Act 2003 and the Racing Industry Act 2020 to control the impacts of Class 4 and TAB gambling in their communities. And Class 4 gambling is the use of non-casino gaming machines, also known as pokies. The mechanism for this responsibility lies in the development of a gambling venues policy, which must be reviewed by Council every 3 years. The policy must determine where Class 4 and standalone TAB venues can be located and how many. The current version of the policy, as I mentioned, was adopted in 2021, and at that point, Council adopted a sinking lid approach, which was a change from the previous capped approach. The current policy also includes controls about where venues can relocate and under what circumstances, and includes a cap of 3 Class 4 venues in Taradale. So a few stats. Napier currently has 19 venues with 291 machines and 2 TAB venues. There's been little or no change to these numbers since 2021. We have 45 gaming machines per 10,000 residents in Napier compared to 28 per 10,000 nationally. And while gaming machines are the most cited form of gambling by people seeking help for problem gambling, the gaming machine profit from pokies continues to increase, and this reflects a trend across the country. In 2023 in Napier, for example, $22.4 million was lost to pokies. And Napier has the 6th highest gaming machine profit per person in New Zealand. Māori and Pacific peoples are disproportionately impacted by gambling harm across the country. While there are some community benefits from Class 4 gaming through the return of a portion of the revenue to the community through grants, not all funding comes back to the communities from which the profits are taken. So this paper today presents 3 options for Council's consideration. Option 1 is to retain the status quo, which is a sinking lid, allowing relocations under certain circumstances and permitting club mergers. This is identified as the preferred option for a number of reasons, as discussed in the paper. Option 2 is to reintroduce the capped approach, and option 3 is to introduce a sinking lid with no relocations and/or no club mergers. Should Council resolve to adopt the 2024 gambling venues policy in the form of the 2021 policy with some non-material editorial amendments and make no further amendments, it's noted in the paper that there's no requirement to complete a formal consultation process under the Local Government Act. And this was the approach taken by Hastings District Council when they resolved to retain their current policy, which has a similar approach to ours, and that was done in August this year. If, however, Council determines that consultation is appropriate or another policy approach is preferred, a statement of proposal and the associated required materials will need to be developed for your approval before being released for consultation, and so we would come back to you with those. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Michelle. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Price.
Just one on that option 1. So if someone's covered if their landlord puts their rent up to such a ridiculous level that they have to move, they can then relocate. Is that the way I read that?
We would look at their particular circumstances. Yes, likely.
Yeah, it's just so that a landlord doesn't get that powerful. Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Tariha.
Just regarding the sinking lid, because to me the restaurant, Bollywood, is a new restaurant to me, and however they got machines in there, and so Can you explain how that happened?
Through the Mayor, yes, we can do that. So essentially, if a venue closes and no longer operates, those machines, I think that happened under the last policy when it was a capped approach, so those machines transferred to a new venue under the same operator. So the machines are owned by an operator and they happen to relocate to Bollywood stars.
Councillor Gregg.
Oh, yes, through the Mayor, just a question about the preferred option. Given the high level of gambling harm in Napier and the amount of machines, we have 45 per 10,000 versus 30 in Hastings, and the high level of harm caused by them, why are we not going for the more restrictive option? Why is the preferred option chosen?
Through the Mayor, I think what we have seen nationally is this is a bigger issue than what councils themselves in and of themselves can influence. The gaming machine profits across the country are going up from pokies, and we also know that online gambling is becoming more popular, so it's kind of a trend that's happening nationally. Because of that, potentially it's unlikely that venues are going to be wanting to close or move necessarily, so therefore we're kind of limited in the impact that we can have.
Any further questions? Any general discussion? Can I have a mover? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Crown. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you very much for this and for the workshops that we've had on this issue. I think gambling harm is something that obviously does plague our Napier community, and Napier City Council has the small part to play in it, in its regulation. So despite the sort of previous comments, I think this is the most restrictive we can be with the number of gaming units that we have, so i.e. when something closes down, they are not able to be replaced or moved or changed to another operator, which essentially means over time we should see the reduction, although we know it's extremely profitable for businesses to retain them. So I think it will be unlikely that we see a large number of reduction in units over time. However, we've got the right policy in place to capture those when it does come up. I know that there was huge support from our submissions and previous reviews for the sinking lid policy, and so I think keeping that status quo is prudent for council. And just noting, of course, that with gambling harm, it really is the access to addiction services that have the greatest level of impact on reducing gambling harm as well. So very supportive of those submissions that we received from those organisations that supported this approach in previous years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crown. Nothing further. Any further speakers? Councillor Vogue.
Yes, I'd like to speak against this recommendation. I prefer option 3. I'm very disappointed that the option we chose in 2021 has made absolutely no difference whatsoever. The sinking lid has not sunk, basically, because we've been able to allow relocations, and we still have more money spent on gambling and pokie machines now, more social harm, and our policy is supposed to have regard for the social impact of gambling, and it's quite clear from the figures that you've presented to us. Top 10 of pokie spending in New Zealand, the 6th highest in New Zealand. Shame, really. Highest of all TLAs in Hawke's Bay. What this means is the level of social harm from pokies in Napier is still very high, and I think it's our responsibility to do what we can to try and reduce it. I know the argument's been made that if there were no relocations, as this proposal allows relocations, that landlords might put their rent up for venue operators. Well, tough, who do we care about? Do we care about the vulnerable members of our community who are addicted to this and who will continue to spend unlimited, huge amounts of money that they don't have and cause social harm in their own lives? Our responsibility is for people in the community, not necessarily for landlords or tenants whose landlord may increase their rents. So I think pokies, Class 4 gambling is a serious issue for our community, and I think we could do a lot more than just maintain the status quo, under which we've seen the number of pokie machines increase in action because we've allowed relocations, and the amount of money that individuals are spending on pokies increase and the social harm increase. So I'm speaking against the resolution.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Yes, just through the chair, I support the resolution. I've been through a few of these over the years, and this is a great example of how statistics can be picked and pulled and prodded. We come up with a figure of how much is spent in our machines, but we know that we're a tourism and events town, and many of these people come into town and spend nights here and go out to the pub and on the town and spend, play the pokies because maybe their city doesn't have them. So that spend is not necessarily all from Napier people. I don't think it takes into account our surrounding areas such as Puketapu, Whirinaki, Esk Valley, who I guess associate to Napier when they come into a town and spend their money at night. And the other thing that's always got me over the years, we've looked to reduce machines, and every time we reduce the number of machines, the gambling harm goes up. So at least we're not making, from what I see and consider from what I've watched over the years, we're not making it worse by keeping it the same. I think the only way you can perhaps prevent it is to remove every single machine, and then it's not an option.
Thank you. Any further speakers? There being none, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, show a hand perhaps. Thank you, Councillor Greig and Councillor Bogue. Carried. Thank you very much. Next up, we have the Napier Library Content and Collections Policy. Welcome, Nicola and Elizabeth.
Kia ora, councillors. So we consider the paper and policy as being read. We're requesting that the council receive this new policy and recommend council to adopt the policy today. So the Napier Library's content and collection policy is a new policy, and it consists of an overall statement of the library's collection intentions and guidelines, for also selection, maintenance, retention and disposal. Any questions?
Excellent. Thank you, Nicola.
Sorry, short and sweet.
Open up for any questions from councillors. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Nicola. What do you think will be the most controversial part of your new policy?
Ooh. The unknown. I think you never really know what you're going to encounter because everybody has different opinions and different perspectives. So you can always get people who are contentious about particular things, but yeah, the unknown is, it's quite difficult to answer. Hey, Elizabeth, you got anything to add?
Not really. It's capturing practices that have been in place for a while now, so it's a fairly high-level document. I think, as Nicola has said, this will be a publicly available document, so if people are reading it for the first time, because it is a new policy for the library, they haven't had a collection policy before, so I'd like to say thank you to Nicola for putting that together, and it is in keeping and in alignment with policies around the country used by other libraries. I think, as Nicola has said, when people look at deselecting, how people acquire works, those often will be debated because they'll have their own view on what should be collected and what should be retained. So that might be.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. The reason for my question is I'm not a regular user of the book part of the library, and so I was interested to see if there was a particular thing that was a change in standard operating practice for you, or something that you envisioned would create some controversy once it was implemented. But it's good to hear that it is really formalising the way that you're currently operating. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Any further questions? Any general discussion? I have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Sure. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Crystal?
Oh, just thank you for this, and it's great to formalise what the library does. It's a fantastic service for our community. There's not many things that are pretty much free in our community, and our library is one of them, so thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Nothing further to add.
Any further speakers? Okay, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Rightio, on to one of our favourite topics, the draft Freedom Camping Bylaw 2024. Jill and Michelle.
Kia ora koutou. Awesome. Thank you so much. So like you said, favourite topic. We've been talking about this for a while now, so excited to put forward a proposal for us to move forward with. A brief summary of the paper, and I'm happy to take questions as we go, but we are seeking that we would adopt in this meeting the statement of proposal and our draft bylaw so that we can go out for a period of consultation in accordance with the Freedom Camping Act and the Local Government Act. Just a reminder that this bylaw can only look at things within Section 11 of the Freedom Camping Act, and that means we can define areas that we can restrict and we can prohibit in certain areas, and only for the purpose of protecting the area, meaning the physical site where the freedom camping takes place, and the health and safety of people who visit that area, and protecting access to that area. So our current bylaw is very permissive. We really want to invite freedom campers to Napier. This aligns with our strategic priorities that we want to be a great visitor destination with spaces and places for all, and our authentic community relationships. So in general, we have a blanket rule that if you're in a self-contained vehicle, you can park in the permitted areas for one night across Napier. There are prohibited areas which include parts of our grass reserves and another part of the scheduled list. There are conditions for which you must abide by about how you behave, litter, nuisance, things like that. And it also empowers us to enforce and imply penalties as well. Our current bylaw looks at four sites currently. Two of these are the Allison Street car park and the Te Karaka Perfume Point car park. These are well used, as we've discussed in the report, high occupancy rates. The West Shore Beach Reserve has been temporarily closed since 2021, and the Foreshore Reserve car park is also high occupancy, but that is our one with non-self-contained vehicles permitted at that site. There are 8 sites there. We also have a list of prohibited areas in Schedule 2 or 3, which say where a person cannot any circumstance freedom camp. And so as part of this review and preparation for our consultation, we looked at the recent judicial review in Queenstown Lakes District Council, and that really helped us formulate some of the criteria that we looked at, because the findings from that were that we cannot look at the property values of neighbouring residents, and we cannot look at protecting views of neighbouring residents as well. We've also displayed data for site occupancy, compliance rates, infringements, our patrols and complaints costs. We did some pre-engagement with key stakeholders, mostly coming from the Freedom Camping Working Group that was set up back in 2016, 2017. And we've also looked at bylaws across the territorial authorities that are similar to us, like Gisborne, Coromandel. And the biggest piece of data that we collected was the site assessment, where we looked at 18 sites across Napier that might be suitable for us to look at moving forward. The scope of the review has grown, and now we're just generally looking to see if our bylaw is still fit for purpose, still wanting to address and protect the needs of the freedom campers, the freedom camping sites, and the community in Napier. And so just to summarise, our draft bylaw for consultation is very similar to what we have, with a couple of key changes. We are looking to prohibit camping in non-self-contained vehicles across the city. This is to align with the new national direction from the self-contained vehicles legislation. In addition to that, from the site assessment, we're also proposing in the draft bylaw to retain our high-performing sites or our high-ranking sites from the site assessment. This included Pump Track and Perfume Point. We're proposing to close the Foreshore Reserve and West Shore Reserve because of their ranking and how they placed in that criteria about protection of the site. And the option that we've proposed also includes the potential for adding a new site or sites from the ones that we've considered to help continue to provide for freedom camping in Napier. Because of the nature of a SCP, we do have to put forward a potential site as part of the draft bylaw, so we have proposed that the aquarium be considered, but as part of the consultation, we're inviting feedback for any potential new sites to be added to the bylaw. Any questions or thoughts? Happy to answer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeriel. With regards to the upcoming consultation, and I note that in the engagement plan you've stated that letters to nearby residents of existing and of any new proposed sites will be sent to the residents areas. What am I reading? Have you actually set the parameters of how far out that goes? I know the pre-engagement was 100 metres, and we received feedback from some residents living outside of that 100 metres that they would have liked to be involved. So just wondering, how perhaps you've tweaked how you have defined those parameters.
Kia ora, thank you for your question, Madam Mayor. We are proposing to send letters out to nearby residents of all 18 sites. So that's the first thing. The second point around the range, the kind of radius around the sites, we were proposing to still use the 100 metres. It is a bit of an arbitrary line in the sand. I mean, if we extend it, we could easily extend it. We're happy to do so. But if we did extend it to, say, 150 metres each way, where do you stop is the question, I guess. So it is a line in the sand, but happy to take your direction on that. At the moment, we've retained the 100 metres to the north, south or east, west of the centre point of those 18 sites.
And through the chair, that is only for the purpose of targeted notification. The submission would still be for everybody.
Think about that one. Any other questions? Councillor Price, then Councillor Green.
Just further to what the Mayor was speaking about, that's one concern maybe you could look at, please, is you're better to go too far than not far enough. Because as soon as you put them out, the phones start ringing, and I guess the Esplanade is one example. And it would be good if you could go further out than too tight. Please?
Through the Mayor.
Perhaps provide some guidance on that today.
That would be welcome. Through you, Madam Mayor, also some of the sites are quite close together. So, for example, West Shore and a few at the northern end of Marine Parade. So there is a bit of overlap, which does encompass a good range of households and businesses in some instances. So, but yeah, we're happy to take your direction.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Mayor Wise. Okay, so I note that the Freedom Camping Bylaw is to protect public spaces, manage public health and safety, and preserve the natural environment. My question is, the signage, the new signage that's going to be there, just checking that we are including no lighting of fires?
Yeah, that's right. That would be within the scope of the conditions that they'd have to abide by.
Councillor Bogue.
Right. Oh, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The difference between self-contained and non-self-contained is the self-contained ones have toilets, right? So we obviously will have people, homeless people or people who are not self-contained, parked up somewhere. And I'm just wondering which toilets, so you probably can't answer this, but I'm curious to know which toilets, public toilets, are open 24/7 in Napier. And
We
I
might
think
take
it
that
would
one
be
offline, Maxine. If we could just make a note of that and we'll get that
Oh, okay,
information for you.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, in terms of the distance of this from the sites, and I'm just, yeah, should it, and I get what you mean, how long is a piece of string? I'm conscious of West Shore probably in particular because that community is very interested in this, and I would probably prefer to go a little bit wider rather than narrow. So I would put 200 metres on the table for consideration.
I'm thinking, are you looking at me to give an answer?
Well,
I thought-
just your thoughts, yeah. Because I'm sort of talking about your ward.
The corner start of the Esplanade, I'm thinking that's probably, how many metres would that be from the ring? You know what I mean? Quite a good starting point.
So is
Where
that,
the Esplanade starts on the corner.
yeah.
I know, I can see the corner, and
Oh,
I can't describe the
yeah.
corner to you.
I know what it means.
Where the
Charles
dog,
Street
where the
turns
dog
round,
legs have.
Ferguson
and
Ave,
left into the,
Ferguson Ave intersection
yeah, and
with.
the Esplanade goes along there. I'm thinking that's probably close to 200 metres, and that's quite a good starting point on that corner, and then going 200 metres past would be my. But I could have a drive down and probably give you a clue.
Could you walk and deliver some pamphlets at the same time?
Perhaps we could just, because we can actually, we don't need a decision on that definitively today. So let's perhaps send Councillor Price on a little reconnaissance mission. He'll need a driver. But that's okay. We'll find him a chauffeur, and we'll come back to you with some guidance on that.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if we could have that by noon tomorrow, that would be very helpful.
Noon tomorrow?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
No problem. Councillor Crystal.
Just with the chair, just with regards to the aquarium site, does the actual aquarium staff and management get a say in this? Because we're looking at car parks, and I know we're looking at EV car parks, and so that's a lot of car parks they would lose in that area. So has the business got a bit of a say in what's going on here?
Yeah, certainly. The implementation of it will give us, or once we've heard back from the community from this higher level governance level, we'll be able to look at what the implications might be for the sites that have been recommended. So certainly we've had initial conversations with the aquarium, and we are mindful that there would be implications in terms of, the access. It is a shared asset, so meaning the car park is reserved asset, whereas the business itself is the one who has to look after it. We are mindful that that is something that would come after we've received submissions and would know what direction the community wants us to look at. But I understand we did have to put through something as part of the consultation, so yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions or general discussion? No? I'm happy to move from the chair, seconded by Councillor Price. Hey, very comprehensive report. Thank you for all the work that has gone into this so far. We know this is an issue that our community is particularly interested in, so he's hoping we get lots and lots of submissions to help guide us with the next decisions around this. So thank you. Councillor Price.
Yeah, I think you will get a lot of submissions, but I think you've done a good job and you've identified the issues pretty well, and I think we don't affect residents too much in their dwellings, which is, I think, is a good result. Well done.
Any further?
You never thought I'd say that about freedom gambling.
Any further speakers? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, we don't have any reports from standing committees, and we don't have any tenders left, so this actually brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. If we could all stand for our closing statement, please. Kia tau, te rangi mare, kia runga i ngā iwi katoa, kia piki ki ora, te kaha me te māramatanga, i ngā wā katoa, tihei mauri ora. Thank you, everybody. Up an hour.